So, Senator Bernie Sanders, along with Representative Ro Khanna, have introduced legislation that, if passed, if put into law, could potentially put some dampers or hold Donald Trump back from unilaterally being able to take us to war with Iran. So, obviously, yes, we definitely need that legislation. And if the Democrats hadn't basically gave everything to Trump that he wanted under this year's NDAA, some of these provisions would have already been in there that wouldn't have allowed Trump to do what he's currently doing towards Iran, i.e., the Soleimani assassination, as well as any type of unilateral action by the executive branch going forward. So let's check out this article by Common Dreams about this legislation from both Sanders and Khanna. Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna Friday night unveiled new legislation that would bar any Pentagon funding for military force in or against Iran without congressional approval, an effort to forestall what many in the U.S., Middle East, and around the world fear is a march to war by the Trump and administration. So obviously, if our government functioned properly, the Congress is the only branch that actually has the authority, has the war powers, the ability to draft up articles of war, then they get voted on. If it passed, then we declare war on a country. The president shouldn't be able to unilaterally declare war against a country. This changed a little bit after 2001 and some of the, I believe it's the authorization to use military force, or just the authorization of military force. The AUMF agreement gave the executive branch as commander-in-chief a little bit more leeway of what kind of situations they can just kind of basically on their own declare war in, and then send off the troops to go fight wherever. And then so this is getting what I was talking about previously, of how the Dems could have already stopped Donald Trump from having these powers, but of course the resistance is a full resistance, if that, by the Democrats usually. This is from the article. Sanders and Khanna criticized their fellow members of Congress for handing Donald Trump a $738 billion military budget that did not include any safeguards against a war with Iran. An amendment sponsored by Khanna and Representative Matt Gaetz was approved by the House last year, but the measure was stripped out of the final budget in bipartisan negotiations. What are you doing? Democrats, you didn't need to pass that. If you couldn't get in that measure, then you say, F it, I'm not gonna pass it. Super important. Stick to your guns. Democrats aren't very good at that, though, obviously. Congress now has an opportunity to change course, Sanders and Khanna said. Our legislation blocks Pentagon funding for any unilateral actions this president takes to wage war against Iran without congressional authorization. This is also another good point. We know they'll ultimately be the children of working class families who will have to fight and die in a new Middle East conflict, not the children of the billionaire class, the lawmakers added. And at a time when we need to face the urgent need to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, to build the housing we desperately need, and to address the existential crisis of climate change, we as a nation must get our priorities straight. Very good, yes. And that's something that I always think about, when the war hawks on mainstream media, as well as, the president in the White House currently, as well as, certain members of Congress have never met a war or some type of military conflict or bombing campaign they didn't like. And whenever that stuff happens, where are all the people that, how are you going to pay for it? Where are you going to get the money from? Where's the funding? Deficits, funding. You never hear that stuff when it's to drop bombs and destroy countries and, murder little kids and families and, leave behind, radioactive waste sites and all these other horrible things that, come with war. So you never hear where the money's going to come from when it's for bombs and destruction, but when people propose actual programs that, benefit people, like Medicare for All, like free college, like a Green New Deal, all these, other things that materially actually benefit people and don't cause death and destruction. It's like, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Where's the money going to come from? More death and bombs, death and bombs, death and bombs. Crickets, crickets. But it's definitely very true, the point Khanna and Sanders are making is that, it's not the sons of Donald Trump and Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett who are going to go, be fighting in the Middle East or whatever stupid conflict that, the United States, stupid and unnecessary conflict the U.S. gets into, next. It won't be children of the wealthy oligarchic elite. It will be, the poor and the, working class who off there, dying and, running this fool's errand of, just propping up our dying and decaying empire at all costs and to only benefit the wealthy oligarchic, elite and their connections with the military industrial complex, I should say. And then this is Khanna on Twitter. The first thing Congress should do when we get back to Washington next week is pass Senator Sanders and my bill to block funding for a war in Iran. It's time to act on the power that founders gave us in reference to, the power to declare war. So what do y'all think? Will Nancy Pelosi even, bring this up for a vote next week? So I think that's how it works, right? The speaker calls up, the people to introduce legislation. Is that how that works in the U.S. House of Congress? And if she does, would the vote be along party lines, or what would it look like exactly? Would there be some Republicans that would be able to, call Trump out on his warmongering and say, no, the people who wrote the Constitution are actually right. Congress should be the only branch of the, federal government that is able to declare war. That's not something that we should give to the president just to be able to declare war unilaterally. So what do y'all think? Will this bill get brought up for a vote next week in Congress? And if so, what do you think the vote would look like on that bill? Peace and much love. No war with Iran. Bernie 2020. Much love.